And we are live.
Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm good. Podfeed, how are you doing this fine Sunday evening?
I'm doing great. No, I'm doing fine. Well, we've got a hop-in live audience here. We've got Alan and Kevin and Jason and Frank and Jill and Mike and Rick and Sandy and Steve and Michael coming and sliding in from Japan. And we got Wheels in the sidebar here. Anybody else? Nuclear John? I'm not sure he loves us anymore. Thank you for the roll call, Alan. And Jill. Did I say Jill?
Yeah, you said Jill.
Yeah, she's interesting. She's green in the sidebar.
Yeah.
I guess she looks normal. Yeah, she looks normal in the live show. Listen, I get it. What's for dinner, Mr. Allison? I was going to say, I don't do.
You have one guess, Frank.
It's not easy being green.
Yes,
Chicken.
Very good. Very
there
good.
There we go. Hey, look what I got.
Boy,
I happen to be looking for something in Lindsay's den and discovered she had an old iPhone 4.
That is like the smallest iPhone I've ever seen.
I think maybe I'm going to put my Google SIM in it and use it as a phone for a few days. I'm not sure it can get security updates though, but it does. It is booted up. Oh, actually, the screen is so small, the passcode doesn't quite fit on it. The 0 is kind of cut off at the bottom. I think that's a 4, right? It's got that's not a 5, is it? With the flat sides. I gotta look up the model number. A1332.
Can't you see about or go into the phone general about or whatever? Does that tell you?
Yeah, it probably does. But
Too much work.
I would just launch Backtracker and ask it A1332. Is that what I just said? A1332.
You're in display.
Phones. What's that?
Never mind.
This is important stuff. A1332. iPhone 4, June 2010.
It's only 11 years old.
Yeah, it looks like a 4. Yep, it is. It's very cute. It's got a cracked screen. I wonder if I can replace it. All right. Well, we've done a test recording, so we should probably get started.
I'd say so.
Round volume controls. Yes, round volume controls. Oh, you've got one? You gonna take it apart? Can I have your screen? All right, muted Steve. Steve's muted. Here we go. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeet.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, November 28th, 2021, and this is show number 864. Well, I'm going to do my, what is starting to sound like a broken record here. Things are going to start to get real busy in the month of December for me, like it is for most of you. But if you have some tech lying around, something you're excited about, a web service you think is cool, or you want to go on a rant about something technical, I could use some reviews. Not sure exactly when I'll use them, but I've just looked at my schedule and discovered things are going to get pretty dicey in December. So if we could have some reviews here, that would be fantastic. You can send them to me at allison@podfeet.com.
Where was that again that we could send them?
Allison@podfeet.com. You just got crackly again.
I did? Am I crackly in Discord chat room?
It stopped.
Oh, interesting.
It seems like at the beginning of let's see, yeah.
It may be when I'm doing things, loading my processor, because I was in the process of switching.
You can't possibly churn that thing.
Yeah, you wouldn't think.
No. All right.
Title.
It's time for some chapter marks. That's weird. The chapter marks went, but I didn't hear them.
Uh-oh.
Why didn't I hear them?
Don't do.
Where would I hear them? Probably turned something off.
System sounds?
No, sound effects is up full blast. That's weird. I'll have to think about that. Okay. I've got to read up on BART here. There we go. As long as it worked. Yeah, I mean, but does it work if I can't hear it? I don't know if that's true. All right, here we go. This week's Chit Chat Across the Pond is another installment of Programming by Stealth with Bart Busschots. And as we embark on our journey to create a JavaScript module for the strong, memorable password generating service XKPassWD that Bart created in Perl long ago, Bart explains the importance of how we will need to be able to create good documentation. That sounds really annoying and tedious. And it is. So Bart explains why a good documentation generator will be our friend. He outlines two distinctly different users of our documentation, those of us who will be helping to create the code itself as part of the community project, but also for the people who will be users of our JavaScript module. Those users might be interested in how to take this module and, say, embed it into a web page to generate passwords for people, or to create maybe an Alfred scheme and more different opportunities for it. These two different users will have different requirements, and yet our documentation generator can fill both of those needs without unnecessary extra work. This is not the sexiest topic, but Bart does convince me that the tools will help us to have the rigor to do it and not let our human instincts take over and allow our documentation to get out of date. You can, of course, find Bart's fabulous show notes at pbs.bartificer.net, but I want to play you a little clip from the very, very end of our recording to let you know that in spite of how annoying this topic sounds, how much fun we had doing it. Okay. Let's see. Bart, here it is. Fun we had doing it. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks.
Indeed, and until then, happy computing. Yeah, I know we went long, but gosh darn it, I was having fun.
Do you like that? I ran it together a
good.
little bit. I clipped it. I think I made it a little bit too soon. I'm going to cut that and split it and just move it over a little bit because it was actually much farther apart. There was a big gap. Come on. Split and give us just a smidge more space.
Happy computing. Yeah, I know we went long, but gosh darn it, I was having fun.
You like that? I left it in the recording too. I wasn't supposed to, but I left it in.
Nice.
See,
right.
I told you it was fun. Okay. Maybe I don't need to add that. I think it stands alone. What do you think? Chapter mark.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Where am I? I don't want that one. So next we are going to do... Oh, this is a fun one. I'm going to talk about self-driving cars again.
No, there's no stay patched and stay secured because it was not a security bits. It was a chit chat.
Yeah. That's, you might not know the outro to Programming by Stealth is happy computing. You will hear it with security bits today. So, all right. So now, why I look forward to self-driving cars. There's going to be a whole bunch of little bits here. These are not going to be, in fact, this will be about a minute. All right. Let's see, I think I'll put it right here.
Darn it, I was having fun.
Well, last week, I told you how disappointed Steve and I have been with the full self-driving beta we've been testing from Tesla. I wanted to give you a little different perspective on the situation this week. I went to visit some friends, and on the way back, I decided to let the car drive me home. The drive was not super complicated, but it did have a right turn on a red light and a few other interesting maneuvers. I would still describe the ride as being with a student driver, but it wasn't terrifying at all. It didn't seem like a drunk student driver on this particular ride. It was a bit too tentative, so the time it took to make a right turn on a red light was long enough to impel the Verizon Fios driver behind me to give a gentle honk. The drive included a T intersection with a stop and 2 lanes going in my direction. The intersection is right in front of a little shopping plaza and has lots of foot traffic. My self-driving Tesla came up to the intersection, waited for the first car on my left to make its turn. It then stayed still because a pedestrian started to walk into the crosswalk in front of me, and it did not go. But then a human driver came up on my right and blew through the stop sign with the pedestrian stepping into the crosswalk. Luckily, the pedestrian was paying attention and did not get splattered across the road. This is why, in spite of the problems we've been experiencing with the Tesla program, I still believe humans should not be driving at all. And I'm glad to be part of a beta testing service. Oh, dang it. Stumbling. But then a human driver came up on my right and blew through. Luckily, the pedestrian was paying attention and so did not get splattered across the road, and they waited while the car went through the intersection without stopping. This is why, in spite of the problems I've been experiencing with the Tesla program, I still believe that humans should not be driving at all, and I'm glad to be part of beta testing full self-driving. It will get better, and it will learn, unlike humans who evidently never will.
I saw a little typo there with foot traffic.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Do you want me to do that, fix that, or
I think I got it.
Okay.
And I'll send a blog. And actually, it was the first, the car was on the right, not the left. Sandy?
She wouldn't know that.
No, traffic
Oh.
ended in an E.
No,
I like to give her a hard
that's
time.
the British spelling.
I'm going to cut your salary for that one, Sandy.
Wow. You run a tough...
Oh, can you make sure I didn't just... Sometimes when I post them again, they end up looking like they're draft. If you could...
You mean after saving?
After I actually push it back up. Dock my salary. Yep. Okay, let's see. Where am I here? Do a chapter mark here. This one's a little bit longer. I missed my boops. I wonder what happened to those. I saved this one from a couple weeks ago. All right. Okay, here we go. I did a chapter mark. Thank you, Kevin. Here we go. Thank you, dear. You've probably heard me talk about my amazing web app, Time Shifter Clock, that allows you to figure out what time it will be in multiple cities at once in order to schedule times to talk to people around the globe. Well, recently I had a chance to see how it dealt with the U.S. leaving daylight saving time. Or is it entering? I never know. Anyway, most of the year, Los Angeles and Dublin are 8 hours apart, but because the U.S. is idiotic, we get on and off daylight saving time at different times than the rest of the globe. That means Bart and I are 8 hours apart most of the year, then briefly for a week or two, we're 7 hours apart, then we go back to 8 hours apart, and then back to 7 hours apart for a couple of weeks. It's basically a hot mess. The night before the U.S. got off daylight saving time was November 6th. Dublin and LA were 7 hours apart according to my clock, which was correct. To test that it was working properly, I used the slider to shift time forward to November 7th when it should have showed us 8 hours apart. But sadly, it did not. I was very disappointed that there was a bug I would have to fix. I spent some quality time with my code and I figured out my mistake. I take the current time in the first city, which defaults to LA because it's my app, and I convert that to Universal Time, also known as UTC. It's a bit arrogant that we think we're in charge of declaring what time it is for the universe, but I digress. After I change it to UTC, I'd round it down to the nearest hour, and then I convert any cities chosen to their offset from UTC, and then I add the time chosen with the slider to move each city forward in time. My mistake is that I should add the slider value to the UTC time before I convert it to the different cities' times. So I found the bug, and that was good. Once I realized my error, it was time to code up the fix. I use VS Code as my code editor, and I've been experimenting with a plugin called GitHub Copilot that makes suggestions for what it thinks you might want to write. It's pretty helpful to me because I often know what I want to do, but I'm unsure of the syntax. If I get a running start at a function, GitHub Copilot often will write the rest of it for me. In this case, GitHub Copilot came through like a champ. It wrote all by itself the line of code that I actually needed to code. I'd set up the previous line, and it just filled the rest of it in. It was fantastic. Now, I put the code in the show notes, and that may look and sound like gibberish to you, but it was exactly what I needed. It says to take my rounded down time in UTC and add the value from the time shifter to create a new reference point in UTC. While I was fairly certain that I had found the root cause of the problem because logically I could see that I had made a mistake, I wasn't certain that I had implemented the fix correctly. I needed to test my fix, but there was a big problem. Time shifter clock only lets you shift forward 7 days, so how can I test this solution without waiting until the next daylight saving time change? I told Bart that I was pretty sure I'd fixed the bug, but that I was sad I couldn't test it. He suggested that I change the date and time on my Mac to right before the previous or next daylight saving time change and then test it. There's 2 interesting things about that idea. First of all, I had no idea that Time Shifter Clock was using the time of the user's computer to do its calculations. I thought my code was, reaching out to some sort of time lord to know what time it was. I thought the moment.js library I was using was in charge of the actual time. Now, I'm really glad I had this bug because learning you have a fundamental misunderstanding in how your own code functions is a very good thing. I mean, of course, it'd be better if you didn't have a fundamental misunderstanding, but if you do have one, you really want to learn about it. Now to Bart's idea of changing the date and time on my Mac. I was trepidatious about this suggestion because bugs in a system can easily be introduced by an incorrect system clock. In my case, I know for sure that spooky action at a distance would occur because I have a lot of Hazel rules that are time-based. For example, when my recorded audio files are over 2 weeks old, Hazel whisks them over to my Synology NAS for cold storage, and it deletes them from my internal drive. Even if I turned off Hazel for the duration of my testing, I was still worried about what else I might have going on that was time-based that I just didn't remember. I induce enough weirdness on my computers all by myself. I do not need to invite spooky action at a distance into my house. When I explained my trepidation, Bart made an even better suggestion. Why not do it in a virtual machine? I thought that sounded like great fun. I could install any flavor of Linux, change the system date within that OS, and then do my experiments all without breaking anything on my Mac. Now, virtual machine software such as Parallels and VMware Fusion are highly capable and awesome pieces of software for people who need to consistently run another operating system or more. They're not inexpensive, so for a tinkerer like me with needs a couple times a year, they're not the right answer. Now, 100 years ago or so, Sun Microsystems came out with an open-source virtual machine app called Virtualbox. And when Oracle bought out Sun, and the stock I owned in Sun went to zero, they kept Virtualbox going. I've used it in the past, so I downloaded it on my M1 Mac. While I was downloading, I also downloaded the ARM version of the Linux distribution CentOS Stream. You see, I've got an ARM-based Mac, I needed the ARM version of Linux. I expected that Ubuntu would work and would be easier, but what fun would that be? I wanted to try CentOS Stream, and that would make it more challenging. Now, when you download a disk image for an operating system like Linux, it's called an ISO, which makes it look like an old-fashioned CD to the installer software. Unfortunately, it looks like Oracle is no longer a good steward for VirtualBox because macOS Monterey refused to install it. It said, "The installer encountered an error that caused the installation to fail. Contact the software manufacturer for assistance." All right, so VirtualBox is out. My next idea, since I didn't want to pay for the commercial virtual machine apps that would have made this trivially easy, was to see if I could install Linux into a Docker container on my Synology NAS. I'm always looking for excuses to justify the cost of the Synology, so this was a perfect opportunity. Now, I'm not an expert on Docker containers, but from what I understand, they're essentially wholly encapsulated environments where if you break anything, you just throw away the Docker container and start over. This is one of the reasons I love playing with software. If you break it, you can just start over. On the Synology, I already have Docker installed, so I just needed to find a Docker container for Linux. I easily found one for Ubuntu, and I installed it. I had no problems at this point, but I couldn't figure out how to make the Ubuntu container go. I couldn't find a launch, a start. There wasn't a go button. no way to point to a downloaded ISO image of Ubuntu or anything like that I could find. I'm sure there is a way to turn it on from within Docker, or there wouldn't have been a container. So somebody listening probably knows, and I'd love it if you'd let me know how to make it go from within that Docker container. All right. Well, when I went to the Googles to try to figure out how to make my virtual machine inside a Docker container go, I discovered something delightful. Synology provides a tool called Virtual Machine Manager specifically for installing and running virtual machines. So I didn't really need to use this whole Docker container business. I found a fantastic video by an Australian named Emilio Aguero explaining exactly how to configure Virtual Machine Manager on a Synology NAS with Ubuntu server. Now, I know at this point I should have followed his instructions, but I already had that ISO for the ARM version of CentOS downloaded, so I used that instead. I followed his instructions to upload it from my Mac to the Synology. And I'm taking a pause because I got a pause in Mars Edit and I wasn't able to scroll. Where was I? I followed his instructions to upload it from my Mac to the Synology. Okay, save. I am one of the doctors. Oh, I met one of the doctors. I thought you said you are one of the doctors. I saw a great image today. It said, I doctored this image, and it was a picture of the Enterprise cockpit, or whatever you call the main room. What is it? Where they drive. Anyway, and it had all the bridge. Thank you. It had all of the doctors in all of the chairs, all of the doctors from all of the Star Treks and the Orville, and I think a couple other shows. Get it? He doctored the image. I thought it was funny. All right, back to work. I followed his instructions. There we go. That's it, Alan. And it works. Now, if you've been paying close attention, you'll understand why that failed. While the ARM version made sense when I was going to install it in VirtualBox on my ARM-based Mac, of course it's not going to work on the Synology because it's x86-based. All right, still wanting to test out CentOS Stream, I downloaded the x86 version. It started to install, but then it asked me a whole bunch of questions. I just didn't know the answer to these questions, and so it was time to bail on CentOS Stream and switch to Ubuntu. Maybe there's a reason why so many people like it. Once I went down the Ubuntu path using the Virtual Machine Manager on Synology, it was relatively clean sailing. I got it installed and spent a little time figuring out how to set the screen resolution in Linux so I could see what I was doing. Actually, sneak it in. How to set the screen resolution. I got it. The one tricky bit that Emilio explained is that you have to start with Ubuntu Server, and once you get that installed, you tell Ubuntu Server to install Ubuntu Desktop. Kind of weird, but it works really well if you just follow his instructions. Once I got Ubuntu Desktop running, I spent a little time figuring out how to set the screen resolution in Linux so I could see what I was doing. Now, technically, everything worked, but for some reason, it thought I had caps lock on when I didn't, and I never did figure out how to fix that particular problem. I also must say, it's really, really slow to run a virtual machine on a Synology. It was usable, but I definitely wouldn't want to use the Synology for any length of time as a host for my virtual machines. Now, what was the point of this whole experiment of installing these virtual machines? Other than getting a chance to play with my Synology and learn about new tools, I needed to test my time shifter clock in an environment where I could mess with the time on the local machine. In order to test time shifter clock, I wanted to set the clock back to Saturday, November 6th, the day before the US came off of daylight saving time. On that day, Dublin and Los Angeles should have been 7 hours apart. But if I slide the time shifter into Sunday morning in Los Angeles, it should at some point start to show us as 8 hours apart once daylight saving time has been abandoned in the US. Now, my testing needed to be on the unreleased version of my code, which is in GitHub, which in turn creates a web page for me automatically. I set the clock on the virtual machine to 10 p.m. on November 6th, and then I tried to open the GitHub web page for time shifter clock. Boy, howdy, GitHub did not like that at all. GitHub knew the time on my system, and yet I was asking for something from the future. I thought that was really interesting, and I suspect it had to do with their very tight authentication requirements, for example, using a time-based authentication code to log in. I figured out that if I went to the GitHub webpage first with the time set correctly on the virtual machine and logged in and got my webpage up, I could then change the time and the webpage would continue to function. Now for the big test. The daylight saving time change happens either at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., depending on how you look at it. I moved the time shifter forward until it said 1 a.m. in Los Angeles, and I confirmed that Dublin was still 7 hours ahead, showing 8 a.m. I nudged it forward a half hour, and I saw 1:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. When I nudged it forward a half hour more, Dublin moved to 9 a.m., but Los Angeles jumped back to 1 a.m. again, finally moving us to 8 hours apart. You can imagine my squeal of glee when I was finally able to verify that my web app was functioning perfectly now. I put 3 screenshots in the show notes showing you the progression so you can see what I'm talking about here, but I also made a little video showing the success of shifting time over a daylight saving time change in one country with respect to another. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Programming makes me feel like I have made fire. Now, I bet some of you out there have realized that I could have made a virtual machine in a much easier way. Just 5 months ago, I told the story of how I used the free UTM virtual machine software to install Ubuntu on my M1 Mac Mini. I totally forgot that I had already solved this exact same problem. I was searching for a fix for that pesky caps lock program in my VM on the Synology when I stumbled across the instructions of how to install Ubuntu on UTM, and it was the same instructions I had followed back in June, but they were on my other M1. They were on the M1 Mac Mini, not my M1 MacBook Pro. For completion's sake, I had to install it again on my M1 MacBook Pro, and it worked perfectly. And it was a lot faster than running on the Synology. I got to tell you guys, if I remember just half of what I'd done over the years, I would be brilliant. Oh well, I had fun learning about Virtual Machine Manager on Synology, and I had fun experimenting with the different versions of Linux. In any case, I made fire, and Time Shifter Clock is better than ever. I'll be pushing the release of this new feature soon. Boy, did I ever publish that new feature?
Bodie joined us.
Bodie! Hi, Bodie. How are you? Good to see you. Let's see. Did I release Time Shifter Clock? I don't know if I did. That was weeks ago.
You know, Bodie's avatar looks a lot like Buzz Lightyear.
I don't see Bodie
without the helmet
in the chat room. Where are you seeing him? I don't see him where he can hear us. Is he there?
He's
in the sidebar, but
he's in the sidebar. Let me show you.
Did he say hi? Oh yeah, he did say hi.
Yeah,
he does kind of look like Buzz Lightyear.
He's coming in through the website. I
All right, save and chapter marks, huh? All right, it's time for a shorter one here. Let's see, chapter mark. I would like to know why my tool is not making any noise. I'd count on that boop. We haven't learned about unit testing frameworks. Yeah, I think I could have successfully built a unit test that would have proved I did it right, even though I did it wrong. I wouldn't put it past me because my logic was wrong. So I would probably write a test that had incorrect logic. All right. Keeping going here. Try that again. I walk my dog Tesla every single day. Yes, my dog and my car have the same name, but she actually came first. Speaking of daylight saving time, I usually head out sometime between 4 and... That's not gonna work. During daylight saving time, I usually head out sometime between 4 and 5 p.m. In California, that means broad daylight and warm, dry weather most of the time. But when daylight saving time ends, a walk anytime after 4 p.m. means a walk at dusk. In 2018, I told you about how I almost got hit by cars 3 times in a span of 2 weeks while walking Tesla at dusk or in the early evening. Now, once might be the driver's fault, 3 times suggested that the drivers simply could not see me. On the third attempt to take my life, I was wearing a long-sleeve, bright orange shirt, but evidently that was not enough to make me visible. My solution in 2018 was to buy the tag-lit LED magnetic blinkers from Night Eyes and sprinkle them all over my clothes. I also bought an LED ring to put around Tesla's neck and even a pendant LED light to attach to her collar. The change was immediate, as more than one person actually opened their car window to tell me, "Hey, I saw you because of those lights." This solution worked pretty well, but the taglets don't have a strong enough magnet to hold reliably when attached to a sweatshirt as the weather got colder. They're just not that strong. They kept falling off and getting lost. I'd retrace my steps and sometimes find them, but I often found myself having to buy replacements. If you walk alone at night, I still think they're a good solution, and hopefully you can find better clothes to which you can attach them. The LED light ring for Tesla wasn't actually bright enough, and it only allowed increased visibility if it was actually fully dark. It added no additional protection during dusk, which I think is the most dangerous time of the day. Her pendant wasn't very bright either, and the casing got dinged up and was dingy looking, and the non-replaceable battery eventually died. The other problem was that it took a bit of extra time to hook up all these devices and get them turned on. I would have to make a decision each day on whether it was really all that dark and did I really need to put them on. If I was hesitating at all, you know this was a flawed solution. This year I came up with a new solution that is easier to use and even more effective. I turned again to the wonderful folks at Night Eyes to see if maybe they had an LED leash, and indeed they do. They call it the Night Eyes Night Dog 5-foot leash, and it sells for $26 on Amazon. There is everything to love about this leash and virtually no downsides. I bought it in the color they call lime, which is super bright and reflective even without turning it on. They also sell it in a light blue, but I think that might miss the purpose of this leash. The leash is USB rechargeable, which is awesome. It has 3 modes: off, solid on, and blinking on. The handle is nicely padded, so it's very comfortable to use. Now, I prefer a shorter leash, so with the Night Dog, I do have to give it an extra wrap, but the handle is actually kind of stiff, and it wraps really nicely into a double kind of a handle. The handle isn't too thick, so it isn't a huge problem. Even though it's padded, it's just still not that thick. One of the main advantages of the Night Dog over the taglet system and other accessories is that it's so easy to grab the evening leash versus the daytime leash. There is no longer any hesitation because it is literally no extra work. This means it makes me safer because I'm sure to use it at the right time. I could go one step easier and use that leash all the time, but I walk so much I don't want to unnecessarily dirty the leash during daytime walks. I've taken Tesla out with this leash often since the time change, and I have to say it is a huge enhancement to the visibility of us to drivers. Night Eyes doesn't market this leash as being reflective, but like I said, it sure does seem to reflect even without the light turned on. There's an easy-to-push button on the controller right near the handle, and this thing is really bright when you turn it on. Another reason this is more effective than my previous combination of lights is that the leash swings when you walk. A light is one thing, but a moving light is unmissable, and this is a long moving light. With a single device, I don't think I need it to light me up. With this single device, I don't think I need to light me up or add any lights to Tesla, and yet I believe we are much more visible than we were before. I put a photo and a video of Tesla and me in the show notes to... I'm not in it. Why did I say I was in it? I put a photo and a video of Tesla in the show notes to demonstrate just how bright the Night Dog is. Note that in the photo and the video, it's only 5:17 p.m., which was just 30 minutes after sundown, so it's not even truly dark yet. The brightness of the leash demonstrates how much safer I feel. My neighbor Rick just got a new dog, and he's been religious about walking her for the past few months. And I love to encourage people to exercise, so I bought a second Night Dog for them. It's given me great joy to see the two of them out walking with this crazy beacon of light keeping them safe. If you've got a dog to walk and you've been finding excuses not to walk in the evening when it gets dark, or you've got a neighbor or friend or family member you'd like to keep safer, I highly recommend the Night Eyes Night Dog Rechargeable LED Leash. $26 is worth saving a life or two. Oh.
Good pick. Well, not that it's a pick.
Yeah.
Good leash. So it came up somehow that we've on occasion have forgotten Tesla.
Uh-oh. Who told on us?
I think Mike somehow was aware of it. You might want to just relay what that means.
Well, it's not her fault. She doesn't like to go in the car. So when we're getting ready to leave, she doesn't hide or anything, but she just
she
just doesn't come to the door.
Recalcitrant.
Well, no, she's not. No, she just doesn't voluntarily get into the car. So
well, sometimes
the
she
worst
doesn't
part
hide.
though is when she doesn't hide at our house. The worst part is when we go to somebody else's house. So we'd go to Kyle and Nikki's, or we go to Lindsay and Nolan's. Lindsay and Nolan, she actively hides. She goes under the dining room table and is like, maybe if I don't make any noise, they won't remember me. And so we haven't technically left yet. Oh, we did almost leave the house once to go to San Diego without her though.
Yeah,
like
that
the
was
garage door
embarrassing.
had closed when we went, hey, wait a minute. So we had to add her to our packing list. It's sad. She's such a sweet dog. She just doesn't make any trouble. Right?
No, not at all. I mean, yes, she's a sweet dog and no trouble.
She really is. All right. This is my
next
last
one's
story.
a long one, right? No, moderate.
No,
Moderate.
you're crackly again.
Yeah, I'm scrolling.
Oh, you shouldn't have scrolled. Okay, there's some good photos here. Oh, that didn't. Hey.
What's the problem?
Just not seeing. Oh, maybe it's just that. Yeah, no, it's right. Nothing wrong. All right. Should I save? That is a little much. I can't see anything anybody else has written. Kevin.
I think he does that on purpose.
I know, but I'd saved and I added a chapter mark and he's still yelling at me.
Well, I don't know if it was clear. I hadn't called up the screen for him to see that.
Oh, okay. Did you post the video link too of me walking with Tessa, or do you think the photo's good enough?
I did both.
Oh, you did?
Yep.
I only see the.
It didn't bring up a little, snapshot. It's just the link.
Oh. Okay.
532.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah. I didn't say it. Oh, I have to say thank you each time to get him to stop. So if I say thank you really quickly, will that mean there'll only be one? Or will there still be like 12?
No, I think all you have to do is say that you put in the that you put in the chat.
Oh, I did it while you were blathering about something. Okay, here we go. We often visit our daughter Lindsay and her family. Because we go there really often, I like to make sure our electronic life is as smooth as it is at home. Lindsay is an accomplished geek in her own right, so she enjoys the improvements as much as we do. Lindsay's first house was very small, and I outfitted it with a 2-unit Netgear Orbi mesh system. For this little house, it was overkill, but it worked perfectly. But then she moved into her new house, and the 2-unit Orbi system was not up to the job. Her new house is a very long L shape with multiple levels, including a basement. The cable connection comes into her home in the den, which is, of course, at one end of the house. Even with the second Orbi at the corner of the L, the signal didn't reach to their bedroom at the opposite end of the house. The distance from the den to the L corner was just too great. I upgraded her house to the second generation Eero Pro, which was the bee's knees at the time. This is the version that has 3 full-size router units with tri-band radios, and that means it has a dedicated 5 gigahertz backhaul. That allows your devices to connect at 5 or 2.4 gigahertz, and then the traffic between the routers can also travel at 5 gigahertz speed on that backhaul. Now, there are more advanced versions of the Eero now, even one supporting Wi-Fi 6, but the one she has is a terrific system. With the unit placed not quite to the L corner and another one in their bedroom, the gateway router in the den was able to flood that giant house with Wi-Fi. Now, all was well for a long time, but recently things started to degrade. The degradation was intermittent, with the Wi-Fi working perfectly fine unless we were visiting, and the slowdown was really noticeable. Lindsay called her internet service provider, Comcast, and they asked her how many devices she normally had on her network, and she responded, I don't know, around 25, to which the genius on the phone said, oh, you can't have more than 10. Like, what, is this 1992? What are you talking about? When we're at a house, there's a smidge more than 10 devices sharing Wi-Fi. The last time we came to visit Lindsay, she was still at work when we arrived, and she sent me a text saying she always knows when we've arrived at her house because her notifications from Eero go bananas, repeatedly saying, a new device has joined the Tondi Ranch. She sent us a screenshot, and I put it in the show notes. It's pretty hilarious. When all of us are at her house, simply surfing the web became painfully slow. I'm talking like 5 seconds to load a web page. For some reason, streaming video on the Apple TV continues to work just fine. I'm thinking it effectively buffers the data, so intermittent connectivity isn't a problem. It got so bad on our recent visit that we were starting to use our phones to tether to be able to do anything at all. It's time for me to diagnose the real root cause. My good friend Pat is a certified Apple consultant, and she installs a lot of Eeros for her clients, so she's my go-to when it's time to noodle an Eero question. I pinged her and I described the situation, and she gave the classic instructions to turn it off and turn it back on again. I pulled power from the gateway unit that was attached to the modem. Probably should have unplugged them all and given them a group timeout, but I only pulled power from that main unit, the one that's connected to the modem. This did not fix the problem. Next, Pat and I discussed things like emptying caches on devices, but since it was affecting every single device, from iPhones to iPads to Macs, I didn't pursue that path. She also suggested I check to make sure that the Eero software was up to date, and it was. I was starting to wonder whether we actually did have too many devices for the Eero system. A quick search of the Eero support website found this in the frequently asked questions section. It said, how many devices can one Eero support? One Eero can support up to 128 devices. You read that right. That's one very connected home. However, if those devices are heavily using the internet for activities like streaming video, you'll probably see best results using up to 30 devices with each Eero. Even with Lindsay's Ring doorbell and floodlight cams outside the house, her Wise cams and baby monitor cam inside the house, her 4 Apple TVs, her connected oven, her Sense solar monitoring system, and all of our computers and mobile devices, we weren't anywhere near 128 devices all on one of the 3 Eeros, and we were only streaming on one device at a time. So it wasn't the number of devices. But somehow our arrival with all those extra devices really seemed to be affecting the performance of the network. Pat had me check to make sure that I didn't have both the modem and the Eero router handing out IP addresses. If you do that, you can end up in a condition called double NAT, or double network address translation. The modem in this case is a Netgear 3500, which is about as dumb as you could hope. I don't even think it has a router in it because there are literally no controls for assigning IPs in the web interface, even under the Advanced tab. That ruled out the double NAT problem. Pat also suggested that I check DNS because it always seems to be a DNS problem. DNS stands for Domain Name System, and this is a system that does a lot of things, but one of them is translating the names of websites into the external IP addresses for those servers. That's a simplification, but if you're not using a well-managed DNS server to make those translations, things can get slow. You may be using DNS servers from your internet service provider, and those are rarely well-managed. You can choose a different DNS, and our recommendation is to use Cloudflare, or if not Cloudflare, maybe Google's DNS. I double-checked, and I had already set Lindsay's Eero to use Cloudflare's DNS 1.1.1.1 and the backup one of 1.0.0.1. So that was not the problem. For once, DNS was not at fault. It was a great suggestion for me to check that, though. Pat then suggested I contact support. That's really good advice. The last time I had a networking problem, she suggested I contact Eero support, and they were as good as she said. The rep stayed on the phone with me for a very long time while we diagnosed and then fixed the problem I had. In this case, I wasn't quite ready yet to pull the support parachute on this problem. I went back to the idea of unplugging the main gateway Eero when I finally noticed something curious. The power supply connects to the Eero via USB-C. The insulation on the cable, right where it connected to the strain relief of that USB-C connector, was cracked and broken. I couldn't tell whether the wires inside were actually broken, but it seemed like it wasn't a good idea to keep it this way. Unfortunately, the other end of the cable was hardwired into the power supply, so to fix that problem, I would need both a replacement charger that would provide 24 watts of power or more and a new USB-C cable for it. Now I travel with a gallium nitride 65-watt charger with a very long USB-C cable, and I use that to charge my Mac, my iPad Pro, and to recharge my travel battery while I'm there. I swapped out the frayed cable and charger on the Eero with my gallium nitride charger and the new USB-C cable, and then I waited while everyone jumped on their devices. The network immediately started performing perfectly. We played with our phones, our Macs, our PC, the PC that God, I had trouble saying PC. The network immediately started performing perfectly. We played with our phones, our Macs. There were even a couple of PCs online. Forbes played games on his iPad, and we had no slowdowns, even with streaming on the Apple TV. Since the 65-watt charger was overkill, and since I actually need to use that gallium nitride charger, I went on a hunt for a more suitable replacement. Lindsay and I found a Samsung 25-watt charger for $16 at Best Buy, along with a 6-foot Insignia braided USB-C cable for another $9, and most importantly, they were both in stock and available for pickup same day. I swapped in the Samsung charger and the Insignia cable, and the Wi-Fi connection continued to work flawlessly. Now, the question is, why did the frayed cable cause intermittent networking problems only when the number of devices went way up? We noodled this and thought perhaps the gateway router connected to the modem was limping along with a compromised signal, but the 5 gigahertz backhaul. We noodled this. Getting dry. Your daughter breaks every cable. How is she? How old is she? Number of devices went way up. We noodled this and thought perhaps the gateway router connected to the modem was limping along with a compromised signal, but the 5 gigahertz backhaul was working well enough to push us to one of the other routers in the house. We were all in the den together when this poor performance occurred, which could be accounted for by being connected to a faraway router. In my opinion, the more likely possibility is it wasn't the frayed cable at all, but that second reset of the router system that lasted quite a bit longer actually cleared out whatever had gotten the Eero's panties in a bunch. A $24 replacement power supply and cable was still a good investment, because even if this wasn't the root cause, it would eventually be the root cause of some problems.
I think that was good to swap out. Most definitely.
Yeah. Which do you think it really is? You think it could have been the cable?
I think there's a possibility it could have. A couple things would have to line up for that to occur. And the wires didn't look separated to me, but it was kind of hard to tell. They could have been internally, because of no strain relief, maybe internally separated under the insulation.
Yeah, but if a cable was separated, it was
getting power, right? The Eero was powered. You're just saying that it was getting partial power occasionally and was...
Yeah, but if it wasn't powered, then there's no way... I don't know that the other routers could be connected. Because they have to talk to that router to be connected to the internet.
That's the main unit.
Yeah, that one has Ethernet from the modem to it.
Well, I can't imagine that being it then. Yeah, because if that goes, everything goes.
You would think.
Yeah. I would think.
I mean, it's not like the Ethernet cable was frayed. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. I like Anchor stuff too, and I did look for that, but I couldn't get same day on that. And I wanted to use my charger. All right, I'm not doing a chapter mark because it is time for support the show. Oops. Let's take a quick pause to celebrate two more longtime supporters of the NosillaCast. Richard Appia and Jonathan Scott have both been supporting the show for years, for 4 long years. Think about that. For 4 years, their contributions have helped to keep the servers humming, the backups running, the microphones clear, and the blogging and podcast feed software up to date. Without contributors like Richard and Jonathan, the podcast would be a very expensive hobby. If you got a few shekels or rupees or lira or won or yen to spare, please consider becoming a patron of the Podfeet podcast by going to podfeet.com/Patreon. Thank you again, Richard and Jonathan, for your long-term support. Do you like that whole shekels, rupees, rupee thing?
Very creative, and you're about to get all sorts of currency.
Yeah, why not?
I don't see that in the show notes. Support the show is missing. It's just got the header.
No, it's not.
Well, and what I'm looking at, it is. I just refreshed.
Well,
try again.
I will push it again, but it's right after too many devices on an arrow.
Before security bits, all I see is support the show as a heading.
Maybe I pushed it and then I wrote it afterwards. Do I accept seashells? Yes. Okay. He wants a chapter mark. Don't distract me. All right. We also have to remember to do our chapter mark count. It's going to be a lot of chapters because lots of little bits this time. All right. And now we're going to bring in Allison and we'll bring in Bart. And we'll drop this down. Option T. Option T. And then we'll get rid of Bart there. Get rid of me there. And we'll move Bart up here.
No plink?
You want to hear the plink?
Blink.
There you go.
You feel better?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, I need these over here first so I can cut it. Nope. I am so excited that I figured out how to cut 2 at once. That makes me so happy. How about right? Okay, Steve, get ready to listen.
I'm listening.
Long-term support. Well, it's that time of the week again.
Perfect.
It's time for Security Bits with Bart Boost Shots. How you doing today, Bart?
I am doing just fine. I don't like this winter thing. Can it go away now, or is it only just getting started?
Just to be a complete jerk, I sent a photo to Bart and to Stephen Getz in Canada of my granddaughter in basically a bathing suit in a swinging out over this gorgeous pool with palm trees in the background. It was 81 degrees Fahrenheit on the day after Thanksgiving.
Jesus, yeah. With wind chill, it had a feels like of -1 for me in Celsius.
I think that's about what it. I think that's about what it was for Stephen Getz. I told him I was a jerk. He goes, nah, I'd have done the same thing if the tables had been turned.
I would have been. If the tables were turned, it's like, oh my God, climate change has really broken the place. It's Ireland and there's a pool.
All right, well, let's get
It's about deal.
All right, did my picture drop in?
No, you have to do a return now. Put your cursor back in the
well, I don't know where
in
to
the
put
field.
It. Down here?
Just put it in the.
There
you go.
That's the picture I sent on the day after Thanksgiving. It was 81 degrees.
And right after that, she drops into the pool with a backflip.
She's very talented. Snowed. Yeah, actually, Stephen Getz said it snowed the next day. It's ever since I did it. So, let's see.
Stay patched so you stay secure.
There you go, Alan.
All right. Oh yeah, did you hear that? There, Alan.
Play it again for
ending.
Alan.
All right.
Indeed we shall. And until then, remember, folks, stay patched so you stay secure.
All right. You can't sleep at night without it, huh?
What a relief.
Right. It's funny, Alan. Okay, muting Steve. Well, that is going to wind us up for this week. Remember, I do need some reviews. And how can you get those to me? You can email me at allison@podfeet.com. You can send in questions or suggestions, anything you like, but I would love some reviews. That'd be great too. I'm not on Facebook anymore, so Twitter's the best place to follow me online at Podfeet. Better yet, you should join our Slack community. A lot of great people have been coming in. It's been fantastic to see this flood of people. You can do that by going to podfeet.com/Slack. And in there, you can talk to me and all of the other lovely Nosilla castaways. Bart is even known to come in from time to time. Remember, everything good starts with podfeet.com. You can support the show at podfeet.com/Patreon or with a one-time donation at podfeet.com/PayPal. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, head on over to podfeet.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic Nosilla castaways. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed. There we go.
It's a wrap.
Skeeters in the house.
Skeeter. Like the water skeeters?
Mosquitoes?
Oh, mosquitoes.
Probably.
Yeah, it's kind of cold for mosquitoes this time of year.
For skeeters.
For skeeters.
Leave it to Wisconsin to have winter skeeters.
We had
Thank
no
you, Rick.
loopback problem. Interesting.
Yeah. Subscribe.
Because you weren't running the script.
Because what?
You weren't running the script.
No, I didn't run the log files.
Log files.
All right, it's time for chapter count.
Yes. Let me go back.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm feeling 6.
1, 2, 3,
No, there should
4,
be
5,
7.
Oh, I got 6.
Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1,
That's what I
2,
get.
3, 4, 5. Oh, there is 6. 6 good? Everybody
We're
agree
good.
with 6?
Yep.
All right. I panicked last week when I got done with the show. In fact, I sent out the let up the red flag to Jill to come help me. The show was like part of it was there, but everything else was silent. I'd accidentally somehow bumped. If you watch, you see these in the, let's see, go full screen here. If you see here, I've got a red dot and an M and an S. If I hit that S, that mutes all the other tracks. So the music played, but nothing else was there.
Ooh.
On export. Yeah, it occurred to me the effect was so specific that that's probably what it was. Oh, I just thought of something. This will
What?
finally be an excuse when I talk about my new iPhone 4. I have an iPhone 4 disassembled on my wall in a photo. I've never done a review of it.
In a frame. It's the actual
frame.
parts, right?
Yeah, I can show you guys if you want.
Oh,
It's the
no.
easiest way.
You're going to pull something
Yep.
down off the wall right above your monitor?
No.
Here
No,
we go.
Turn the camera around.
Oh,
you
okay.
goof. Isn't that cool?
That's pretty neat.
Isn't that neat?
The actual parts.
Yep. I need to find out from Kyle where he got that. Because that'd make a fun gift. Be my holiday gift guide. iPhone 4. All right. Well, it's probably time to let people go. Oh, I
Probably
did
is.
make a note when I was on the show that, wow, that exported so fast. It exported quickly because there was nothing to export. It does go really fast now, though. That's an hour and 40, 30 minutes, and it's going to be done in 6, 7. It's going to be done about 11 seconds. 10, 11. Done. Transcoding in that kind of speed. That's amazing.
All done.
All right. We probably should say goodbye to everybody.
We should.
Is Rose here?
I don't
She
think
is here.
Is she?
She's
I
in the
didn't see her.
sidebar.
I missed her.
All right.
Sorry,
Well, I'm
Rose.
going to kiss her goodbye anyway. Bye.
Bye-bye all. Have a great week.